Hi, I've been asked loads of times to do a quick tutorial on how to cover a cake. Now, there are many tutorials on Facebook and on YouTube, but this is the way that I do it, and it's really easy, and it's the way that anybody could do it, and you need really basic equipment. There's nothing here that you can't buy in a supermarket or online. I personally use two smoothers. These are smoothers, and they come in many shapes and many sizes. You can get big long ones, you can get rounded edge ones, it really doesn't matter. I bought these in the local supermarket and I think they were something like £1.50, maybe £2. So they are really cheap. I use two, and I'll show you why later. I've got my cake, and the cake preparation is the bit that will give you a really smooth coating. If you don't prepare your cake properly, and leave it to settle, and the settling bit is the massive magical word, then you find it a lot harder to cover your cake, and you will also get bulging around the sides, which is what you're trying to avoid. And most people, when they're starting to decorate for the first time, do two basic mistakes. They don't let their cake settle, and they also roll the icing out too thinly. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to show you right from scratch. I'll do another video on how to prepare your cake, but for this one I'm just going to show you how to actually cover it. And we're going to use fondant icing. This one's Asda's, but Morrison's, Tesco's, Sainsbury's, The Specialist, Saraceno's, and any of the millions of others that are out there are just as good. But this is the one that I'm using today, because this is the one that anybody can get hold of. There's an Asda or a Morrison's or a Tesco's next to you or fairly close. So this is what I'm going to be using. I'm going to use a rolling pin. Normally I would use this big beast, but most people are not going to have this big beast in their kitchen. So I'm going to use just a little tiny one, a standard one. This one has movable ends, and I can make it bigger and smaller and thicker and thinner, but it doesn't really matter. And I've got a sugar shaker. If you've not got a sugar shaker, it really doesn't matter. You can use your hands, you can use a sieve, but we're not going to use this until we actually start rolling. So the first thing that I'm going to do is open up my icing and then prepare my cake. Fondant is really easy. I personally don't like the taste of it, but it makes really lovely cakes. Now, this is an 8-inch cake, and for an 8-inch cake I'm going to use approximately 3/4 of the icing. So put the rest of the icing, wrap it up. You can use this to cover your board, you can use this to make a little bit extra to make models and things, but for the minute we're just going to be doing your cake. So I made this cake this morning, and we are now 3-4 hours in, and the buttercream has had a chance to settle and firm up, and because of that the cake is now nice and firm. So all I've done in the last 4 hours is cover it with some cling film, and I'm just going to simply wipe my board to make sure that I've got no crumbs, no mess, because we want to save as much icing as we possibly can, and then I'll clean my side down. So I'm going to clean my board, make sure that there's no buttercream or jam or anything else on there. There we go. Put that in the bin. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, because this buttercream has actually firmed up, what I need to do is I need to wet it slightly. And I'm just using an artist paintbrush, just make sure that the bristles don't come out, and a bit of boiled water. I use boiled water from the kettle that has had a chance to cool down, and all I'm going to do is just brush it very gently on the top with a bit of water. All this does is help the icing to stick, because as I said, our icing has firmed up. Just like that. Takes a couple of seconds. You don't have to be precise. You're not covering the whole thing with water. Just as long as you've got some stuck, that it will help. That's fine. So we're just going to do that. And once you've wet it all the way around, use your clean paper towel again just to wipe over and make sure that you've got a really nice clean work surface to work on. I'm actually working on a movable trolley, which is why it's wibbling a little bit, so I'll just move it back. And the last thing that I do before I start is I just get a piece of icing, just a small piece, and just wipe over my surface. What this does is collects any little bits that you've got that you've missed, any bits of dust, any bits of fluff, absolutely anything. Because the last thing you want on a nice cake is bits of fluff on your cake, on your bits. Ooh. So, take off your rings and your jewellery. This is the worst thing that you can work with. If you don't take them off, I guarantee that they will catch in your icing. So I tend to take mine off. They're a little bit stiff because they've not come off in a while. Ooh, maybe they're going to stay on. No, they're going to stay on. Right, okay. To get your icing mouldable, you need to not use any icing. So I'm just going to squash. And it's a little bit harder for me because my trolley is trying to move. And we want this malleable and a little bit soft. It is easier in the summer. Thank you, cameraman, for making my camera nice and steady on my trolley that is now no longer moving because he's used his feet. Keep the camera steady, please. There we go. Right, this is now pretty much done. So you can see that it will leave an indent, but it's still not overly soft that I can't work with it. And because I'm doing a round cake, I want to make a round shape to start off with. And this is when the icing sugar comes in. And what you're doing is the minimum amount of icing sugar that you can get away with. The more that you put on, then the drier your icing will be. See, this is what happens. I should have cleaned my rolling pin as well. So I'm just going to roll this out, and it's firm pressure, and just keep moving it. Don't let it stick to the surface. If it starts to stick, add a little tiny bit more icing sugar, but you really shouldn't need very much at all because it is the right consistency and texture to cover your cake. And what we're looking for is thickness about 1/4 inch. You don't want to go much thinner. But how can you tell when it's big enough? Well, there's ways of doing this. You can use a tape measure, you can use a ruler, but I tend to use, oh for goodness sake, this is what happens. Even when you use a little bit of icing, it will pick it up. And when you're doing a wedding cake and it does this, it's really annoying. So, to make sure that we measure this accurately, I use my fingers to work out the width of my cake. So that'll be about there. But I know that I've got about 2 inches on either side, so I can see that my icing is nowhere near big enough at the moment. So what I'm going to do is move my cake completely out of the way so that I've got a little bit more room. Put a touch more icing sugar underneath. And carry on rolling. I tend to actually put my rolling pin sort of by the side of me, just here, because it's so much easier than keep putting it down, and it also doesn't pick up any fluff or dust or dirt or anything else. Okay, I think we're just about big enough now. So this is my thickness. Close up, please. This is how thick I've gone. If you're unsure, you can always put a pencil or a pen either side of you that's the same thickness and roll it and use it as a guide, but I don't need to do that. Hopefully we've gone right. So my width is about that. Let's just make sure that we're all about the same. And when I put it on my cake, I can see that it is going to be fitting. So if you tip it over, just roll it over, bring your cake And I'm going to do this from the opposite way. This is not the way that I would normally do it, but I want to show you. What you do is you make sure that your icing actually touches the board. And then you can roll it over. But I would do it from this end and roll it that way, but I'm just showing you. So, to get this to actually stick to the cake and to make sure that we don't get any lumps left, I'm going to use this part of my hand. And what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to pull very gently down using that part of my hand. Bring it down and just tease this bit out at the bottom. So all you're doing is sticking, move the cake around. As I said, normally I would actually work with this towards me, but for the purpose of videoing, I'm going to do it like this. What you're not doing is pulling the icing down. You sort of, if I can show you, you're starting at the bottom and actually working up. Because if you do it from the top and work down, the chances are that you'll rip the icing across the top here. So it's at the bottom and we're working up. Turn the cake around, pull it out, ease it in, and then just bring it up. Just like this. And it is a nice quick process. It shouldn't take you very long. And then you'll start to get, some bulges. And what we need to do is just tease those out, push them in gently and ease them up. And the last one. Okay, top shot please. So now we've got our cake covered. And as you can see, it looks okay, but it's not what I would class as a professional finish. And this is where our smoothers come in. And we're going to need to make sure that our smoothers are absolutely pristine for this. So give them a really good wipe. It doesn't matter, I've got 2 different shaped ones. I've actually got about 5 different shaped ones, but these are the ones that I'm going to use, so it really doesn't make any difference for you. Now, what you're going to do is, first of all, you're just going to round. And going round make sure that it sticks properly to the cake. And then we're going to come down and just bounce up and down, just like this. Don't worry about the icing on the board because we're going to nip that off. You can use a knife, you can use a pizza wheel, you can use many things, but this is built in to actually do it for you. This little lip here, if you put it on the base and nip, it will cut it for you, which saves you a tool. You don't need to use anything else. So nip. And just keep going round and round until you've got all your excess icing off. So, you've now got a covered cake. Now you could leave it like that, or you could do this with a nice sharp edge. So I make sure, yet again, that my paddles are clean and I give them a bit of static because it does help. You don't want any icing sugar on this bit, but you just need to make sure that everything is clean. So, the way of doing this is one goes on the board, and then the other one goes on the cake, and you are using an even pressure down on the top, and the circle motion should be like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to push very gently the icing and tap it What you don't want to do is press down too far in one angle, so it's a nice even pressure, not like that, it's even. And just tap the icing on the top into the one that you're holding, and you'll have to hold it quite firmly. And what you do is create a nice sharp edge. For a wedding cake, I would probably spend about half an hour, 3/4 of an hour on this process, but for a general cake, you don't need to do it. And can you see the difference between that sharp edge and then the rounded edge? So a little bit more. And I'm actually going to do it wrong, so just bear with me. If you press too hard, you get a lip like that. That's fine. If you just do that, press it down, you can either work it back in, or if it's too big, just cut it off. It really isn't an issue. So just keep on doing this, round and round your cake. That's the motion, and you're tapping it and pushing that icing. And I'll just finish this off. If you want to cover the board, if you just roll your icing, your remaining icing out, use some water and then cut a strip out. You can put a strip and cover that board. I like all my boards covered, but if you don't want to, you really don't have to. You could spend it and save it and making models and flowers and things like that, which I will do another day. But for the time being, this is what I'm doing, okay? Anyway, I'm going to carry on doing this. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope it's been educational and that you've got some use out of it. And I hope to see you again soon. Thanks very much for watching. Bye-bye from the Baking Lady. Again, my cameraman actually pointed out that my cake icing wasn't quite touching the board. So all you do in that case is just use your smoother to push the icing down, just like that. And yet again nip it off. So if it doesn't quite cover, it really isn't an issue, just push it down. Icing is very forgiving. And this is my finished cake. All the way round, nice and smooth, and you've got a nice even finish. See you again soon. Bye bye.